interviewing him, or if I'd been Nixon, his opponent, I would not have hesitated to ask him, Mr. Kennedy, do you seriously believe that when a priest blesses a wafer, it literally turns into the body of a first-century Jew? I suspect that Mr. Kennedy believed no such thing, but he was forced to pretend to be a Catholic, a devout Catholic, because that was a condition for getting elected. It's a tragedy when a great politician is forced to be a liar in order to get elected. Paul Ryan says he's a Catholic. I hope somebody will ask him that very question very publicly. Now suppose we have a candidate who talks a lot about his fiscal policy, foreign policy, economic policy, and so on, health policy. You may or may not agree with him on those. But would you wish to confine the discussion to those issues alone if you knew that he privately believed that a known 19th century con man called Joseph Smith was a divinely inspired prophet? Suppose that, following this 19th century charlatan, our hypothetical candidate believed the following. First, contrary to conclusive DNA evidence and all archaeological evidence, Native American tribes are a group of Jews who migrated from Palestine to America around 600 BC. Second, Jesus visited America shortly after his resurrection. You may say this is no more improbable than the biblical story of the resurrection itself, and that's true, but the biblical story is old. The Mormon story of Jesus visiting America was quite simply made up in the 19th century. Let's look at the Book of Mormon. Suppose our hypothetical presidential candidate believes that Joseph Smith was guided by an angel, Moroni, to dig up some golden plates on which were written characters of an ancient language which he called Reformed Egyptian. He put a seer stone in a hat, buried his face in the hat, and looked at the seer stone. One by one, characters of this so-called Reformed Egyptian would appear in the stone, together with the English translation. Smith said the English word, which had been written down by a scribe sitting behind a curtain, so he couldn't see what was going on. The scribe repeated the word, and when Smith approved it, the stone displayed a new word in its place, and so on until all 531 pages of the book had been written down in English. The English of 1830, the English that Smith and his followers would naturally have spoken? Not at all. If you have a look at the Book of Mormon, you might be amazed that the style is nothing to do with Victorian English, nothing to do with 1830s English. It is the English of the 16th century. Look at the layout, chapters, verses, footnotes, just like the King James Bible. Now listen to some of the prose, remembering it was written in or shortly before 1830. Mark Twain, by the way, remarked that if you removed all occurrences of "it came to pass," the Book of Mormon would be reduced to a pamphlet. You also need to know that the land Bountiful is believed by Mormons to refer to somewhere in America. 3 Nephi 11. And now it came to pass that there were a great multitude gathered together of the people of Nephi round about the temple which was in the land Bountiful. And they were marveling and wondering one with another, and were showing one to another the great and marvelous change which had taken place. And it came to pass that while they were thus conversing one with another, they heard a voice as if it came out of heaven, and they cast their eyes round about, for they understood not the voice which they heard. So on and so on. And it came to pass that again they heard the voice, and they understood it not. And again the third time they did hear the voice, and did open their ears to hear it. And their eyes were towards the sound thereof, and they did look steadfastly towards heaven, from whence the sound came. And behold, the third time they did understand the voice which they heard, and it said unto them, Behold, my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, in whom I have glorified my name. Hear ye him. So even the words is plagiarized from the King James Bible. If nothing else did, and plenty else does, all that pseudo-biblical language, rather ineptly lifted from the King James Bible, brands Joseph Smith a fraud and a charlatan. Would you want a president who was too stupid to see through Joseph Smith? Even if he does tout himself, in my opinion rather implausibly, as able to balance a budget. Actually, long before the episode of reading the Book of Mormon by sticking his face into a hat, Joseph Smith had already established a reputation as a fake and a swindler. He'd built up a track record in the area as a psychic diviner of buried treasure. He claimed to be able to see the treasure underground by looking through his hat. Everything about the Book of Mormon reeks